You're listening to There Ought to Be a Law, the Center for Auto Safety podcast with Executive Director Michael Brooks, Chief Engineer Fred Perkins, and hosted by me, Anthony Cimino. For over 50 years, the Center for Auto Safety has worked to make cars safer. Hey listeners, today is Wednesday, April 29th. This episode is brought to you by sunshine and happiness and all good things in the world.
Oh, not rain.
No.
Not flash flooding.
No, not flash flooding. Oh, it's flash flooding, let's hope you're not in a Waymo. Because, let's start with that. There's a Waymo that from the San Antonio Express News. Waymo service in San Antonio is still paused after floodwaters wash away robotaxi. So the all-seeing eye of the Waymo, the thing that doesn't drive drunk, doesn't drive distracted, is better than people. It smells great. When you do it, you get taller, your diet improves, your cholesterol lowers. Couldn't see a giant puddle. Quoting from this article, Waymo's ride-hailing services remain paused in San Antonio 4 days after one of its driverless cars was washed away by floodwaters in the city Monday night. Waymo hasn't disclosed where its car was when it was swept away. And Waymo says, as a result of flooding in San Antonio, we temporarily paused our local operations and are continuing to monitor road conditions. Now, keep in mind, this is Waymo saying, we come on the road, everything's going to be great. I've got some amazing quotes from a Waymo person later. Everything is incredible. Oh, this is so good. Our car couldn't handle flooding, but those emergency service people, they'll get out there and somehow safely remove a giant wet battery. That was my takeaway.
So they've suspended service in San Antonio, which is, more than they've done, in Austin and Atlanta when they, continue to pass school buses and can't fix that issue. But this flash flooding problem it's not something new. It looks like, looking back, they've had problems. I mean, they had in Phoenix, they had a vehicle drive into a flash flood and reverse out. In LA, they had one get stuck in it. They had to shut down operations in San Francisco on Christmas Day because of a flash flood warning. So they're keenly aware of the problems here. So it's interesting that, this happens in San Antonio and all of a sudden they're shutting down operations when they didn't do so in those previous circumstances. So it raises a lot of questions about, what's going on here.
And I like the fact that they haven't told anybody where exactly this vehicle was. Like, Mike, even just the San Antonio emergency responders and tow truck drivers who had to fish this vehicle, can't they tell us where it was? Because I think they could add a little detail.
I don't think it would be too difficult to figure that out.
All right. So anyway, let's.
But anyway, it doesn't matter really where it was. I mean, if it was, wherever the flash flood is occurring and the vehicle's not being able to detect it, and is the problem. And I haven't seen this yet. I was waiting to see if someone was going to call this an edge case, so we could talk about that. But this is a very well known problem. In virtually anywhere in America that's prone to flash flooding. And a problem that might be getting worse as the years go by, and autonomous vehicles are going to have to account for flooded streets in their operations. And if they can't do that yet, then, they certainly shouldn't be operating in conditions that are favorable for flooding on streets.
Well, now, Fred, I'm going to ask you some questions here. You ready for it, Fred?
Go for it.
Okay, great. So a flash flooding event, short of a levee breaking unexpectedly, is not something that just, as the name implies, all of a sudden it's a nice sunny day, then the road's flooded. Is that correct?
No, that could happen. That's great. Yeah, depending on how far away the rain is, and you can have events where it's sunny out and rain far away can
cause flash flooding.
Cause flash.
Never mind. Yeah. I withdraw all my questions.
All right.
Thanks for playing. But with this, I'm gonna go right into my gaslight. So this morning I had a gaslight all set up, and then this guy, Phil Copeman, posts on LinkedIn a link to a video about Waymo in Austin, and it's a pretty good news report. We have a link to it from KXAN, and it has on it this guy, David Margine. I'm going to pronounce it. He is the Waymo Director of Product Management. And he says, I'm quoting here, every week an injury-causing collision is avoided because a Waymo is on the road. Wow. The balls on this man to say this with a straight face.
He also said that Waymo welcomes regulations, pretended they're not scared, but then, was quick to clarify that with basically a statement saying, but they have to be the regulations that we want in place, right?
They keep referencing that. They keep referencing that bullshit Waymo report that, made up numbers that say 92% or 94% or whatever, fewer accidents. And that is complete PR bullshit. Even the references on the Waymo website refute that estimate. So everybody just accepts this. It is amazing to see the creation of an urban myth that everybody just accepts without challenging it at all. Is that what reporters do? They just
seems they
absorb nonsense and broadcast it?
Yeah.
No, they go. I guess reporters are going to the source and reporting what they're saying. So, and it's up to us, I guess, at that point to decide.
Yeah. So further in this video, it's great. So they have like a local police chief, and he's asked, if they're committing all of these violations, and there's tons and tons of violations, how come these Waymos, as I've asked numerous times, how come they're not getting tickets? And he said that the police a police officer can't just hand out a ticket like they would to you or me. They have to write an affidavit to cite the Waymo. They have to bring that into the office to someone. They have to look up who the registered agent is. Basically, there's tons of paperwork. It has to be sent to a judge and sent back. And as opposed to just handing a person a ticket, this requires a ridiculous Byzantine level of work to actually cite them. That's why so few have been cited. Except school buses, somehow they have a carve out for this. And so school buses in Austin have filed 25 civil violations because there are tons of videos of these things driving past stopped school bus arms, which we know is a problem. And, this is great. What Waymo says when they're confronted with this, saying, hey, you keep violating this stuff. They said, well, even when we've passed school buses, our ability to detect and avoid vulnerable road users was fully functional. This reminds me of a drunk driver.
So as humans, right? So as humans, when they pass a stopped school bus, they still retain the ability to dodge children, right? Hopefully. That doesn't really distinguish you from human operators.
Oh, he's drunk the Kool-Aid. And it's embarrassing to have somebody say that, but I guess, when you're, what do they say? It's hard to convince people something is true when their paycheck depends on their believing the nonsense.
Right. I mean, this is literally the excuse of a drunk person. Yeah, I blew through that stop sign, but I know what I was doing. I wasn't going to cause a problem. And then one last piece from this here, and this is again from our friend David Margine, the Waymo Director of Product Management. And highly paid tool. Talking about, again, citations and why they're not getting tickets. And he said a $300 ticket to a person is a great motivator. But Waymo, we already have this motivation. So we don't need tickets because we want to earn your trust. Next time you're pulled over, ladies and gentlemen, say, look, I don't need this ticket. I don't need points on my license. I already motivated to not get charged. Oh, shit. You caught me doing 78 in a school bus zone.
I think that's a great strategy. I'm going to try that. And I'll reference you.
Thanks. This is my gaslight of the week. It goes to Phil Copeman from last minute making me change what my gaslight would be. No, it's David Margine, Waymo Director of Product Management. God, I'm sure he makes a lot of money. Who would like to go next, gentlemen? Top that.
I'll go next. I've got Zooks on tap.
Oh,
so you remember a couple of weeks ago we talked about terms of service?
Yes.
So I was wondering what Zooks is on about terms of service. So I went to their website, and before you can get into it, you have to sign up to or you have to register an account, I guess is what it is. And the account setup requires only two acknowledgments. One is an acknowledgement that you've accepted the terms of service, and the other is that you're at least 18. There's no warnings of any other stuff. So I was wondering what is built into their terms of service that probably should be warned before they, people click a box that says, yeah, I've accepted all this. And so the first thing it says inside the terms of service is the Zook's robotaxi is a demonstration vehicle subject to an exemption from applicable federal motor vehicle safety standards. Gee, I would think people signing up for that service might be interested in that. It says, goes on, you are responsible for safety exiting the Zook's vehicle, you alone, including monitoring traffic, road, and curb conditions and determining whether it's safe. So they absolve themselves of responsibility for any safe egress. If you fail to report any damage online, we may determine in our sole discretion that you or your guests caused the damage. So good luck with your credit card, folks. They've got the right to charge you whatever they want. You and Zooks agree that any dispute between you and Zooks, editing here, and relationship between us shall be resolved only by final and binding bilateral arbitration. So again, you're screwed, folks, and you should probably think about this. You therefore understand and agree that by entering into these terms, you and Zooks are each waiving the right to a trial by jury and the right to participate in a class or representative action. You expressly agree that you and your guests use the services at your own risk. We make no warranties or guarantees. To the fullest extent possible by law, the Zooks party's maximum liability will not exceed the greater or the actual amount you paid for the service or $100. And then it says the maximum aggregate liability of the Zooks parties, if you have a guest under these terms and conditions, damages, losses, blah, 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 shall not exceed $2,500. So if you're escorting your daughter to her violin lesson and the car crashes and you lose the life of your daughter, well, congratulations, you may get $2,500. Michael, there's no limitations on the extent of these terms that's listed in the, let's see, what's my statement here? Michael, if you accepted these terms on a Tuesday for a ride to the local Piggly Wiggly, and on the next Sunday, you're run over by a Zook's vehicle, are they still protected by the agreement? Because I didn't see any expiration date or I didn't see any limitations on them.
As far as you know, they've already changed the terms under you in the interim period to make it even worse. So, I mean, look, the contracts we have with these companies are completely in their favor and can be modified at any time to suit their preferences. They're not there to protect you.
Well, shouldn't a reasonable person at least be warned that, you're giving up your rights and your future before you sign up for the ride to the Piggly Wiggly? I mean, it seems to be really.
The warning is in that very long document that no one reads, right?
Yeah, except for us, of course. But
yeah.
Shouldn't reasonable states that are licensing these things require that people at least get some warning of the terms in the policy that are by the company put in all caps, so they shout it at you when you read through the terms of service? This just seems incredibly unreasonable to me. And what their objective appears to be to take the entire population of the country away from the courts and the ability to get any reasonable compensation as they dominate the public roads. Am I missing something here?
That would be their vision. Yes.
So, I want to ask something of our legal expert here. So, Michael, I sign this agreement, or I click the checkbox that says, yes, I agree to waive my rights to trial by jury. What's the one requirement to be a U.S. citizen?
I mean, these days it's up in the air.
No,
right?
there's only one requirement according to the U.S. Constitution for citizenship.
If you're born,
no,
in
it's
what is it?
to serve on a jury.
Oh, a requirement for citizens to perform,
Yeah,
right?
I'm
I thought you were
sorry.
asking what is the requirement for being a citizen?
No, it was that. I apologize for misdirecting you, but I was too focused on what I was going to get at the Piggly Wiggly. All right, Fred. So that's your gaslight. Is all of
That's my gaslight.
That's a good one. All right,
Congratulations to Zooks.
Michael, gaslight us.
All right, we're going back to an issue that continues to come up because Republicans continue to try to raise this in, appropriations fights. And here we've got basically that there's a FISA work going on in Congress, and Representative Chip Roy is trying to attach provisions into the funding for FISA that would tackle what he thinks is another type of surveillance, and that would be the alcohol impairment prevention systems that NHTSA is currently considering rulemakings on. This is yet another person saying that these systems are surveillance, which I suppose is the bank shot type logic that they're using to try to get this addressed in the FISA stuff. But once again, I think it was Thomas Massey from Kentucky before. Now it's Chip Roy from Texas using this nonsense arguments to try to convince people that there's some type of surveillance going on here. I just need to break it to Chip and to Thomas Massey, who are coming out and saying that this is some, new horrible thing that's happening, that the government's mandating your cars. The automakers and the insurance companies, to a great extent, are already surveilling you and what you do in your cars at all times. Some of the automakers are selling that information to insurers. Some of them are selling it to data merchants that could, ultimately be bought by almost anyone out there, including really nefarious parties. So you're already being surveilled in your cars. And the important part of this is that the impairment prevention technology that's being proposed doesn't necessitate surveillance of any type. There is no requirement that it surveil humans. There's no requirement that it stores the information it's gathering. This is all going to happen in the NHTSA rulemaking that has just barely begun on implementation of these systems. And NHTSA could put in that rulemaking that automakers are required to delete any information gained from the systems using or the systems that are behind impairment monitoring to be erased immediately and not used by anyone. The auto industry and the automakers are the ones who want to monetize your data, right? They're making a lot of money doing that. So instead of attacking a federal mandate to prevent drunk drivers from killing people, you should be attacking the corporations who are monetizing all of this data that they're gathering on you and your car. So that their entire, they're using this, roundabout, Fourth Amendment arguments that don't make any sense. There's no state here mandating a surveillance system. There is the United States mandating a system that can prevent drunks from killing people. It doesn't go much further than that. And, this is just essentially, Chip Roy is just the latest in a number of politicians who, in my opinion, are defending the right of people that want to drive drunk, which is not a right. It's not even a privilege. It's illegal. So for that, Chip, gaslight of the week for you, buddy.
I'm not saying I work in Hollywood casting, nor am I saying that Chip Roy would be an actor. But if I were to cast somebody to play the role of drunk driver, I'd cast somebody who looks a lot like Chip Roy. He goes on this. I'm going to quote from, he put this on Twitter. Keep in mind, this is something he posted on Twitter. There's an appropriation amendments to defund vehicle kill switches. Dems snuck it into legislation years ago.
They didn't.
That needs unanimous conservative support. The federal government should get the heck out of our cars and trucks, and no company or third party should invasively track us. Track our movements. Posted using a cell phone on Twitter. The cognitive disconnect here is outstanding.
It is pretty outstanding.
Yeah.
It's just it's just a shame that you've got this potential, you've got this huge problem that represents almost a third of the crash deaths on our roads every year. We've got potential ways to solve it, and yet this is the real Luddites. I think some people probably refer to us as Luddites for our opposition to autonomous vehicles that are unproven from a safety perspective, despite all the crazy claims we hear from them. But this is a real Luddite. You've got technology here that can actually save thousands of lives every year by preventing a scourge on our roads, and people are making arguments as though this technology is somehow going to turn them into the CIA and the FBI and result in their grandmother being thrown in jail. It's not. None of that is happening here. This is all a smokescreen that's being created by people who are actively supporting people who think they have a right to drive drunk and kill other people.
Yeah, these people are, I think the official term is nutso. But hey, again, central casting here. You're looking for a drunk driver, look like Chip Roy. Just saying. He looks Hollywood face ready. So the winner of this week's Gaslight is me, because everyone got really excited and I couldn't even say half the things I wanted to say. But hey, we all jumped in there. That was pretty good. Thanks everybody else for playing. If you'd like to play in the home game, go to autosafety.org and click on donate. Accepting amounts of any kind you want to give us. All right.
Big ones.
Yeah.
Should we have a spinning wheel where we select categories or something? There's got to be a way to turn this into a game show.
Could be.
It already feels like a game show to me. I don't know what you're talking about.
Let's make a wheel, something like that.
Let's make a wheel. That's the worst sounding game show ever.
It keeps coming around.
That's not too bad, actually.
All right. Let's go back to some Waymo. Okay. This is from the Washington Post. Self-driving taxis in D.C. They could soon be legal under a new bill. It's the title of that article. And this was my original gaslight. My original gaslight was the D.C. representative, D.C. council member, Charles Allen. I'm going to quote from this article. Allen said he sought to address a number of concerns about autonomous vehicles, ranging from safety to congestion to the displacement of human workers. A major component of the bill is vehicle miles traveled fee, which Allen said would disincentivize the robot cars from cruising around D.C. streets without passengers and unnecessarily adding to congestion. Revenue from the fee, which along with permitting fees, Allen estimates would bring in millions of dollars. It would be split between a new funding stream for the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority and a fund for displaced drivers, for orphans, spray tanning salons, and a whole bunch of other things. The bill would require a study of the potential scale of displaced workers and come up with ideas about how the fund could aid them. This is fantasy.
Yeah.
We all know this is just horseshit. He knows this is horseshit. First of all, you're going to disincentivize a multi-trillion-dollar corporation with a little fee? Come on. What game is the fee? A few $1 million? Each time they're traveling without they're deadheading a ride.
And we know they have to deadhead to get from point to point, right? And what if they're disincentivized from doing that? What are they going to do? Are they going to take up parking spots in DC? Like, there's no real good way around that problem. If you don't have people in the car, it's a problem with Uber and Lyft. It's a problem with any of those services. You're going to have deadhead miles where vehicles are traveling using up, fossil fuel generated energy to not carry any passengers.
Well, but don't forget that all of these companies have about one person in their call centers for each vehicle on the road. So they've already got an enormous overhead associated with this. And the economic rationale for all of this seems to be to create the solution of great value, even though they're all running at a loss, and and pass it off to somebody else. Like, I guess it's a classic condition for gold rushes. So I don't think that any small additional fee is going to make any particular change in the deployment strategy for these companies, because they're already losing enormous amounts of money. And losing a little more isn't going to really matter if your strategy is just to create an illusion of success and then turn the problem over to somebody else by an IPO.
This is very much a politician trying a new tact saying, hey, like I want us to do this out in a smart way and we're going to charge them fees so displaced workers we'll figure out some way to give them money. And by the time it gets to them, they'll all have left the country. But it's
how high would the fee have to be, right, to actually make an impact on displaced transit workers' lives, right?
It's absurd.
It doesn't. I just don't see that happening.
We always hear the same thing when people want to have a lottery, that it's going to go to
schools,
education, it's going to go to teachers.
Yeah.
And of course, what happens is the money comes into the general fund and it gets distributed just like any other money that's in the city or state budget. So I have to agree with you, Anthony. This is pretty much complete nonsense.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, banner day. It is Wednesday, April 29th at 10:14 in the morning. Fred Perkins has agreed with me. Continuing with another Waymo issue. This is another Waymo-related article from the newrepublic.com. This is titled, Waymos Aren't Going to Solve Traffic Deaths. None of us wrote this. Surprising. I'm going to quote from this. In reaction to the political pushback, robotaxi enthusiasts present a straightforward moral arithmetic that an irrational tech backlash and provincial concerns about protecting taxi and rideshare drivers' jobs are holding back a revolution in road safety that will save tens of thousands of lives per year. To be sure, early data from Waymo looks promising because Waymo's providing it. Compared to the average human driver in places where it operates, Waymo reports that its vehicles are 92% less likely to be involved in crashes with serious injuries or fatalities and 92% less likely to be involved in crashes where pedestrians are injured. Let's ignore school buses and anything else related there. And if you're a Waymo customer, you're 92% more likely to want to be left alone and perhaps suffer from some sort of issues that require professional help. I'm going to stop talking now.
Yeah. You didn't even get to the
just
best
to
part of
reiterate
that
that 92% is a nonsense number.
Give me the best part. I'm saving the best part for you.
Oh, the last sentence of the paragraph you look at says the arguments Kelsey Piper dubbed Waymos as or autonomous vehicles as a pretty good cure for car accidents before claiming provocatively that autonomous vehicles will save more people than a cure for most cancers, which is utter bullshit, Kelsey. Just wanted to make sure you heard that.
Well, Kelsey knows that only 36,000 people die a year from cancer. Because that was the latest number of how many people died on the highways or on the roads was 36,000. So, Kelsey.
I will go to one of my favorite quotes in the article from former NHTSA administrator Ann Carlson. And she says, I'll get to it in a second.
We'll be here.
There's no magic bullet. Increasingly, Waymo safety data seem impressive, but we're talking about a scale that is tiny compared to what you would actually need if you were going to drive down traffic fatalities and traffic crashes. I take the maximalist safety claims with a big grain of salt. And I think all of us should take the maximalist safety claims with a big grain of salt, because it's what we're seeing over and over, what we've seen since Kyle at Cruise. How much better these vehicles are than human drivers. Well, the data's not there yet, and it's going to be a long time before it even approaches a point where we could do that. And even then, it's only going to be data, as we've discussed ad nauseum. How do you truly build a data set that you can rely on when these vehicles are constantly changing the software and operational, parameters that define their safety performance? It's a really tough question, but even at this point, we have so few miles driven in these vehicles that it is very difficult to make any type of claims, particularly the maximalist safety claims that pretend that this is going to save us all from cars in the future. Mainly because that requires that humans stop driving cars before we can see that. And, guys like Chip Roy aren't going to like that philosophy either. I have a feeling that taking cars away from people ultimately is going to be almost as difficult as taking away guns. Right.
Further down in this article, I'm going to quote some more. Next generation vehicle features such as automatic emergency braking and ignition interlock devices, breathalyzers that prevent cars from starting, Driver's blood alcohol content exceeds the legal limit, hold a lot of promise, but are exceedingly difficult for NHTSA to mandate. Michael,
Yeah.
why are these things exceedingly difficult for NHTSA to mandate? Just
I
to
would say there are
remind.
a lot of factors there. Number one, I would say, is the agency is clearly underfunded and lacks the technical expertise to get it done. But number two is they're underfunded because the auto industry, has long opposed funding increases for NHTSA that would allow them to do a better job there. But then the industry turns around and pushes back every time the agency tries to implement any sort of safety system that's going to raise costs. And it's kind of it's just a really sad situation where I think NHTSA is so preoccupied with pushing back on the auto industry that they don't even have time to get to rulemakings of great importance. Like right now, I think we should be getting out better speed prevention technology onto vehicles. It's been out for a long time, mandated in Europe. And yet we've just conveniently ignored it in America, where a lot of people seem to think that speeding is some sort of right guaranteed by the Constitution. We've seen it with alcohol impairment, which we've already discussed today, pushed back politically, but also there's a lot of manufacturers that just sit there and say, well, we can't do that yet. Even if the technology's there, they're not putting into their cars because they know as soon as they put this technology into their vehicles, that NHTSA is going to have vehicles to test and to establish standards for. A really good example of that is in child presence detection. So we've got a problem that's already starting this year with caregivers and parents leaving children in hot cars. And there is technology that can detect children in the back seats or front seats or wherever in a car and warn, whether by horns or by other means, warn people around that there's a problem so that child can be rescued and not, die from hypothermia. That technology has been placed in, I think, at this point, maybe 2, maybe 3 models out of the entire, out of the thousands of models that are in auto manufacturers' fleets. And until that technology at least penetrates the fleet to some extent, NHTSA can't properly evaluate it functionally to set a minimum safety standard. So what do manufacturers do? They just, as a group, don't put it in. Now, whether there's some kind of collusion going on behind the scenes or whether manufacturers just have approached it that way, we don't really know. I would guess the former, but it really sets up a situation where safety technology already takes 25 to 30 years to penetrate the fleet after it's mandated. And NHTSA is taking 20 years sometimes to get to the point where they're actually mandating it in the fleet. So if you have a safety system that comes about that can save a lot of lives, it's not going to be in your car until, you may not even see it while you're alive. It could be up to 50 years before that technology reaches, penetration in the fleet and its maximal performance. So it is a very long slog. And it's something that I think, there need to be a lot of modifications to NHTSA's authority. There needs to be some government reform around things that prevent agencies from acting quicker, like the Paperwork Reduction Act and other things. But there is a lot of work to be done to ensure that our nation's regulators can operate freely and actually act to ensure that new technology that can save lives makes it into vehicles. Because right now, manufacturers are obstructing the safety systems that need to go into cars while rolling out scads of convenience features that technically, or in my opinion, can reduce safety in many circumstances.
Michael, isn't it so that there's only like a half a dozen engineers at NHTSA who are responsible for all of these technical standard evaluations and implementations? And didn't they get really doged by Tesla earlier
Some
this year?
did, it's hard to know exactly what the staffing levels are and what at NHTSA because they're not telling anyone. We know that they lost some, I think it was 7 out of 10 employees in their autonomous vehicle areas. They lost their previous director of rulemaking who retired, I think. So they've got a new director of rulemaking there. And that's really where the meat is, the sausage is made, is in the rulemaking department. That's the area where they have to deal with all of the cost benefit analysis and all of the, government requirements for meeting the standard on appropriate rulemakings. So we don't really have a lot of insight there, but knowing that NHTSA, I believe, has lost about 25% of its employees over the past year makes you have to question whether or not they're going to be able to fulfill their functions.
Yeah, when I was in government not too long ago, I really found about 25% of the time that I was there was just spent answering emails for stuff that was really unrelated to the technical work that I was supposed to be doing. And I can only imagine that's gotten even worse now with all this nonsense coming out of the White House and all of its stooges up there. So I really think that if you looked at full-time equivalents being spent to evaluate safety technology that could be implemented and tested and built into rules and NCAP and all the different things that NHTSA is capable of doing, what you're going to find is there's only a couple of full-time equivalent engineers who are trying to, probably working very hard to try to do all this stuff, but it just can't get done. It just cannot get done with current funding and implementation staff they've got.
Yeah, I mean, you've got hundreds, if not, I got maybe even thousands of engineers working in the industry, creating technology to go into cars, but you have a very, very, very small staff at NHTSA who's dedicated to doing so with a budget that is a fraction of what manufacturers have access to. So it's not a pretty picture, and I think we're there because NHTSA is underfunded. I mean, they need more staffing. They need more. They need funding for NCAP. They need funding for research. They need funding for rulemaking. They need funding for enforcement, and they're getting it at incredibly low levels. And it's a shame, but it's essentially part of the toolkit of automakers, and the automaker lobby is to keep NHTSA hamstrung because that goes in their favor.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to point out that I asked Michael a very simple question. I thought it was saying, what's keeping NHTSA from doing this? And then
there's just so many things.
Even still now. So this was a very passionate response. And I want to let you know, before we started recording, Michael was telling me about his fantasy of potentially becoming a farmer. Come on. So what I want to say is, ladies and gentlemen, prevent him from becoming a farmer. We need him. Autosafety.org. Click on donate. Where else are you going to get that? Again, simple question, and the passion and knowledge, no one else.
Of a farmer.
I mean, what are you going to grow? Sausages?
No, I mean, I think I'll start with, I don't know, herbs are nice to have around.
Okay. Well,
I think it'd look good on a tractor, Michael.
Stop it. Stop it. This is the Anti-Michael Farmer Fund, autosafety.org. Click on donate. Let's talk trucks. We've been talking about trucks a little bit more recently, and truck drivers. There's a op-ed piece in the New York Times, fake news, titled "Truckers Kill More Than 5,000 People a Year. Regulators are at fault." Yes.
I just immediately have to point out that truckers do not kill more than 5,000 people a year. More than 5,000 people a year die in crashes where heavy trucks are involved, right? But when you look at the distribution of crashes, I think a quarter of them are truckers essentially killing themselves by getting into crashes. One vehicle crashes that just involve the truck, those are included in that 5,000 number. And also the crashes where, someone other than the trucker is at fault, which represent, roughly, the numbers are kind of vague, but roughly half of that 5,000. So it's
clickbaity, the title.
It's a terrible title, and it's completely wrong. Although I do agree with a lot of what the author writes further down in the article. The title's awful.
So I'm going to quote from further down, quoting, "The discrepancy in how we value human life based on the mode of transport is staggering. When the Boeing 736 MAX crisis claimed 356 lives across 2 crashes, it triggered a global grounding of aircraft and brought the company to its knees. This was a necessary, indigent response to a failure of safety oversight. We reach that same death toll on our interstates every 24 hours, a 737 MAX scale catastrophe each month. We have allowed ourselves to become numb to carnage on our highways that we find intolerable in our skies. This collapse is the result of a decades-long policy experiment that prioritized cheap and fast over safe and sustainable. For years, a powerful narrative promoted by special interest groups like the American Trucking Association has dominated discussions of highway safety in Washington. These groups have claimed that there's a perpetual truck driver shortage and have used that idea as justification for sourcing labor less expensively. The shortage was always a mirage. While industry groups warned in 2021 that they needed at least 80,000 new drivers to meet demand, the number of active motor carriers registered with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration actually surged, climbing from roughly 500,000 to more than 900,000 in the past decade. This is common nonsense tactic we see across all industries, from the tech industry saying we don't have enough workers, we need H-1B visas so we can bring in guys from Bangalore and pay them half. So this was great. I thought the comparing this to plane crashes is straight out of the Fred Perkins playbook. I think it's a great metaphor.
I was about to do the same thing. Yeah.
And I don't know if this is
around NHTSA funding, right? I mean, that's, if you look at FAA funding versus NHTSA funding and the amount of people that are killed in plane crashes versus car crashes, it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? And also here, you're looking at the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's budget, which is also incredibly low, thanks to many years of lobbying by the ATA. And it's in the article, it says in 2010, they had about $1,100 in oversight funding for every carrier that was registered with the agency. But with the explosion in registrations, we've talked about that recently with the skeleton. What do we call that?
The fake fleets. What are they called?
Yeah,
again?
the fake fleets. I don't remember what they're called, but
zombie
they're
fleets.
foreign zombie fleets or something like that. A lot of registrations are coming in. So they've had an 85% increase in that, and plus, 40% increase in inflation over that time means that the FMCSA has a significantly smaller amount of money to monitor and oversee the operation of all these companies. So it's, the FMCSA is also being driven to incapability, essentially, of enforcement by, both the explosion in fleets and a clear lack of funding and updating the types of funding an agency can receive over time, to account for inflation.
Chameleon carriers. That was the term. Chameleon carriers. Ladies and gentlemen, it just comes down to the simple thing. Do we need $300 million on a ballroom, or do you want to fund safety on your highways? Frankly, I like
the ballroom idea. The ballroom idea is great.
Yeah, I mean, Fred and I have been taking tango lessons over the internet for years now.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to dancing with you, by the way.
You're going to dance with all of us right now. Let's do some Tao.
Here's some Tao. Okay. Tao this week it's going to be kind of short. I've just observed.
Hold on, I want to pause for a second.
Like it.
Tao this week's going to be kind of short. Everybody take a deep breath. I'm just teasing.
So everybody has heard from the AV companies that safety is the first priority, right?
Right.
And you've really got to question the ethics of the companies, because what we've seen with Waymo as a leading example of the AV companies is that in San Antonio, when a single car was disabled by the weather, they disabled the entire fleet for days, right?
It's still
there were 2 cars that were involved in different water events in San Antonio, so I take it back. But when they've been observed passing school buses with flashing red lights over and over and over again, they've actually refused to suspend operations even during those few hours of the day when the school buses are active. So this, in my mind, is a vivid example of how they put priority for preservation of capital and the importance of operations far ahead of the value of human life, particularly the human life associated with school children. It's a real ethical problem in my mind. And, whenever you're putting capital preservation so vividly ahead of the priority for human life preservation, it's a real problem. There's a lot of bad examples in society of organizations that have done this. It never ends well. But for the AV companies to say that safety of people is their first priority, and then to exhibit the behavior that says, well, it's really not. Our first priority is preservation of capital, expansion of the business, and continuation of operations as normal. It should not pass anybody's muster that they are in fact good actors, that they're acting in the best interest of the public in any sense, and that they really do care at all about human safety. This is, it's somewhere between a scam and a gold rush. And for legislators and people who are in a position to regulate these companies, I guess it's unspeakably embarrassing at least. And in Congress, that they would allow these operations to happen without even notifying people that they're suspending their rights, and that, for example, with Zooks, that they're being introduced into a vehicle that is not compatible with federal motor vehicle safety standards, not even the minimum requirements that NHTSA has put out for safe operation of vehicles. And yet it goes on and goes on and on and on. And there's got to be somebody in the legislative arena somewhere who actually reads these things and puts thought into whether or not regulations are compatible with the risk, as acknowledged by the companies, to the vulnerable populations that they serve. Anyway, that's it. I think, any company that in action puts capital preservation far ahead of human life preservation should not be allowed to operate in public, and should clearly be brought to task by legislators and hopefully reporters who, rather than just churning the nonsense that these companies put out, actually look at the basis for the statements that they make. That's it this week.
This week's Tower Fred brought to you by Monsanto, makers of Roundup Ready and other wonderful things. Churning the Nonsense. I think that might be this week's episode. Very good.
Doesn't Bayer own Monsanto now?
I don't know. It doesn't matter.
I think so.
Don't use it on your farm. Before we jump into recalls, let's, I think we got time for a little, we haven't mentioned it really this week, so I'm going to do it. Tesla. That's right. This is an update to a story we talked about before about Tesla says from Inside EVs, Tesla says we'll need to build micro factories to retrofit old cars for full self-driving. Okay, just for the recap, for those playing the home game, a long time ago, a man who was balding and didn't have much of a chin said, I've got a car that will drive itself. It's great. These cars will always be ready. Time passed.
Yeah, they have the hardware necessary for full self-driving.
This car
was the line.
It has all of the hardware. The software will get there. Time passed. This man's chin became more prominent and his hair became full. And his car still can't do what he claims. It says basically, so these people who bought full self-driving and paid for it, he's like, well, I guess we gotta, our lawyers are telling me we gotta kind of retrofit your cars and do this. And I'm doing this is very magnanimous, so I'm not going to charge you for it because, laws. It doesn't cover people who bought these cars, didn't pay for the software because they're like, well, I got the hardware. Once the software's ready, then I'll pay for it. He's like, yeah, we're not going to cover you guys. And so this is for vehicles that are running hardware version 3. And now what Elon is claiming now is it looks like we're going to be able to achieve unsupervised self-driving with hardware 4. He's not even gaslight worthy just because everything he says is a lie and may cause pregnancy.
Yeah, it's retrofits are something that, traditional manufacturers try to avoid like the plague because they are incredibly expensive. And the safety situations we've seen where retrofits are going to be essentially necessary to do a recall, when those retrofits, or if those retrofits are, costly at all, manufacturers will fervently resist them. So the fact that they're proposing a retrofit here really suggests to me that, they're trying to continue this grift more than anything, that these vehicles are someday going to be fully autonomous. They're not. They don't have they're replacing the cameras that you have as part of this, not just the computer. You're going to need more than those cameras to ever achieve full autonomy. And this is just, one more layer of nonsense. I don't see the cost benefit here. I mean, at what point do you just say, sorry, we didn't get it done, here's your money back, right? Versus continuing this pattern of saying, oh, we're going to replace the computers until we figure this out, even though we're going to continue to use substandard sensor packages. And we haven't really shown that we have the capabilities to produce a fully autonomous vehicle at all. There are just so many problems here with Tesla's model, and the fact that so many people have bought into it, that there's going to be pain here, right? Either way, either there's going to be Tesla having to cough up a lot of money to pay back customers who are, led into this belief, or these customers are going to lose their money because, Tesla's not going to be held to account.
Couple of points. Safety claims by Tesla based on hardware less than 4 are invalid as far as operations with hardware 4 are concerned. They were probably bullshit in any event, but in order for them to say that we've gone X miles without a Y number of accidents, really requires stability in the statistical base from which you're drawing. And if you're changing all the hardware all the time, as Anthony pointed out earlier, you've got no statistical base. The other point is that, much as I hate to do it, I have to agree with Donald Trump that immigrants are ruining the country.
Oh my God.
So there you go.
We've reached the.
You're going to edit that out, Anthony? You're going to lift that?
Nope.
Right?
I'm going to loop that over and over and over again.
Much as I hate to do it, I have to agree with Donald Trump. All right.
Before we jump to recalls, this one's been sitting in our box for a while, and it's just too funny. From the New York Post, this is from April 10th. Batman-like technology needed to stop deadly high-speed car crashes in California, Congresswoman. What a weird title, but okay.
It's the New York Post.
It's the New York Post, right. Every person on our road deserves to get home safe. I don't know if everybody, okay? But
come on.
Yeah, the officer on patrol, the family driving to dinner, the teenager walking to school. This is Congresswoman Laura Friedman for her Next Generation Road Safety Act. Continuing, right now, our officers are facing a massive technology gap. They don't have the modern tools to de-escalate dangerous chases quickly and safely. So this is, I think, a big vote. And Michael and I'm going to speak for you, Michael. I think we agree 1,000% more grapplers.
Yeah, we love the grappler, but also I like the drones and other gadgets here, because that's something else that I've thrown a little support behind. Is why are we chasing these people with $5,000 cop cars all over the country and risking innocent people's lives when you can just send up a drone to follow them, right? Doesn't make a lot of sense. I think we need a lot more drones used for pursuits that wouldn't become pursuits, because the driver of the vehicle that's fleeing wouldn't even know they were being pursued by a drone in the vast majority of cases. So drones have drones, drones are another area of surveillance that I think is concerning, but where you have, a criminal activity taking place, sending up a drone to follow that car and to determine who it is, to get law enforcement there to arrest that person whenever they stop the car, is a far better option than chasing through city streets and putting everyone else's life at risk.
Yeah, you got some technical problems though, like darkness and bad weather and operating the drone. And so there's a few steps between here and there. This is one of those things that's easy to say, but hard to do.
Yeah, that's why we want the congressman's funding to go through so they can explore that. We know the grappler works, though.
Will the drones have the grappler? Because I'd
believe that a drone, part of the grappler is using the weight of the police car to stop the vehicle. So unless it's a very large drone, no.
Hey, Grappler Inc., if you're hiring, we're all looking for jobs. We want to work for Grappler. I have no idea.
But it's true. 400 million of ballroom money ought to do it, though.
Yeah.
That's one drone. And with that, let's jump to recalls. Speaking of grappling, I got no transition here. Ford.
You transitioned Ford.
Ford, 140,201 vehicles. The 2024 to 2026 Ford Ranger. A short in the power takeout for the right or left sun visor assembly may create heat or spark, resulting in a fire in the A-pillar area. Wait, there's a power takeout for the sun visor is powered? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I mean, this, you could probably quote a Carly Simon song on this one, but it powers the light that's on the makeup mirror in this pickup. So you do with that what you want.
I love it. Yeah, because when I'm driving my pickup to the work site, I got to make sure that I got my lip liner on correctly.
That's the problem here, and it also, I believe, powers the
stupidity
interior
knob
light in the vehicle, but it makes you wonder, when convenience becomes a problem for safety. This is yet another example of it. And it looks like this one's going to take a long time for to get repaired for some of these folks. They're talking about August as the date for the final repair. There's going to be an interim repair, I believe, in the time being, but it's going to be, end of summer before we see owners being able to get a final fix for this.
Mm-hmm. Next up, Volkswagen, 18,853 vehicles. The 2019 to 2024 Audi e-tron, the 2020 to 24 Audi e-tron Sportback. The screw connection from the input rod on the brake pedal to the actuator rod on the brake booster may not have been performed according to manufacturing specs. Because of this, the screw connection may disconnect. So someone is a Friday afternoon, someone didn't tighten a screw? Is that what's happening here? No, this is...
I don't know. It's a large number of vehicles. I don't think they were building 18,000 vehicles on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah, but Bob only comes in on Friday afternoon. He's, he's hanging out with Chip Roy the night before, so he's a little woohoo.
I mean, it says they're not performing the screw connection according to manufacturing specifications, which suggests that it is a manufacturing issue versus design. But and the fix really only requires them to torque it properly. So it does look like it's a manufacturing boo-boo. Mm-hmm. This one's going to be fixed relatively quick. I think owners will have a final remedy available by June. But since they're just tightening a screw, you think Volkswagen, you could get that done a little faster?
Well, let's find out, because next up, Volkswagen, 38,710 vehicles. The 2025 to 2026 Volkswagen Taos. In the event of a severe rear-end collision, tension in the wiring harness may cause the fuel pressure sensor located on top of the fuel tank to become dislodged or separate from the fuel tank. If this happens, fuel will leak from the tank in the event of a subsequent vehicle rollover. Whoa. Is this a...
Yes.
I mean, this one seems very specific, and they're saying in a rear-end collision, like, is there an FMVSS that says this shouldn't happen, or is this...
There is, and it's 301, which is the fuel integrity standard, where there's a rear collision. And what you're seeing here is essentially you can look at the remedy program. All the fix is here is an 80 millimeter wiring harness extension. What's that? 3 inches. So you're basically giving 3 inches of give to a wire to make sure that it doesn't essentially pull part of the fuel system out of the fuel tank in a rear crash. So it shows you, Volkswagen saved money by not installing, 3 inches of a wiring harness into this critical safety system. And, now they're starting to see results in the field and in testing that suggest that wasn't the best decision. Now they're going to have to do a recall on, almost 40,000 vehicles.
Right. Of a vehicle I've never even heard of. The interesting thing for me on this one is who found this out? Transport Canada, when they were testing these and doing crash tests. So they were doing rear crash tests on this. And I assume Transport Canada is the Canadian equivalent of NHTSA.
Yep.
Okay, but does NHTSA do rear crash tests too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They do. And their standard is the same. Canada's it's CMVSS 301 in Canada.
They're just copying off
the
us.
Fuel integrity standard. And so as part of that, there's a rear collision, I want to say 35 miles per hour, somewhere thereabouts.
Maybe kilometers per
that
hour.
essentially evaluates the performance of the entire fuel system, the fuel tank, fuel fillers, and other parts of the fuel system to make sure that there's not fuel spillage after a crash.
Okay. Last up, Jaguar, 170,169 vehicles, 2021 to 2024 Land Rover, Range Rover Velar, 2020-23 Range Rover Evoque, the 2019-24 Sport, 2020 to 2024 just regular Range Rover, Discovery Sport, Discovery Defender, F-Pace, E-Pace, U-Pace, We-Pace. A concern has been identified on Jaguar and Land Rover mild hybrid electric vehicles where the DC-DC converter can fail due to an internal fault in the boost control microchip. I have so many questions here.
Fred, what's a DC-DC converter?
That was not my first question.
Why do you need to convert from DC to DC?
Because different devices need different voltages.
Okay.
And so DC to DC converters, it's a complex little thing, but they're pretty common. But you can adjust the voltage up or down using DC-DC converters. Typically, they're used inside of a circuit board for some specific small amount of current that's needed by some particular device.
So, I got it. So some cars are moving to 48-volt systems. So you'd have a DC to DC converter if I still have a 12-volt appliance or the cigarette lighter thing. And with DC down 12 volt, hey.
Usually not that much current, but you might have some kind of a semiconductor device that needs a different voltage level. Okay. Typically.
My other question was, what is a mild hybrid electric vehicle? Like, is it not the Picante version?
No, it's mild hybrid. It's one that uses the generator that you typically think of under the hood as also a kind of motor, so that in certain circumstances they can give a little bit of boost to the propulsion rather than a full hybrid, which actually uses a electric motor as the primary drive for the wheels. So the mild hybrid provides a boost, but it provides a boost as an adjunct to the normal propulsion system. So it goes through the engine, through the transmission, rather than directly to the drive wheels.
Excellent.
That makes sense?
Yep, it totally makes sense. Okay, and so what have we learned today, listeners? We've learned that Chip Roy is a grown man who still uses the name Chip. We've learned that you can convert DC to DC. We've learned that Waymo's almost sociopathic PR team has infiltrated their product management speak. And we've learned that Fred likes to wear a hat indoors. And with that, I hope you've enjoyed our time.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
For more information, visit www.autosafety.org.
wait before we go.
Yes.
And you might edit this out, Anthony, but I just thought of a great name for the unmanned aerial systems that law enforcement could use.
Go for it.
Drone Claybrook.
That's coming in after the music.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.